G'day crew, and welcome to this week's video. It's going to be another really short one because I'm still hard at work, so I'll jump straight into it. I just wanted to have a little bit of a talk about reels in this video. This is what I call a conventional reel. It's what I fish with most of my life. Probably fished with this particular reel more than any other. I did have a wooden one, exact same reel, except it had the two handles on and a wooden spool. When Albie used to make them, but some mongrel stole it from me. And if I ever catch them, I'll still beat them with a wet end of their arm. Because I'm still cut up about losing that reel. That was a magnificent reel. Anyway, this one's been really good to me. It's caught some excellent fish. And I just wanted to show you this one because this is what I'd call the conventional reel. Now this one here is what the Americans call a conventional reel, and we call them an overhead reel. They certainly have some nice advantages. I like them, particularly for trolling. I don't think you can go past them for trolling, but they're also great for jigging. One of the things I really like about them for trolling is that ratchet sound. So you don't have to keep an eye on your reel, you can just steer the boat, and as soon as you hear that ratchet go off, you know you've got something on. That's a big advantage. Also good for setting the drag really light and leaving it in the rod holder. Again, you hear the ratchet sound when it goes off, so you can be attending to another rod and it'll catch the fish by itself. That's with a circle hook, of course. It does take a bit more skill to use it, and I'm not the best at casting with them. I can throw it out a few feet, but I don't try to cast any real distance with them. They take a bit more to manage the line, winding it back on, but no more than an Albie sidecast reel. So having fished with an Albie most of my life, I don't really notice it with this. I just keep my thumb on it and guide the line back on. You can get reels with a level wind on it that does it for you, but it's just one other thing to break. I don't find them necessary, but some people do like them. And this, of course, is your spinning reel. When you're getting a spinning reel, I actually like the bait casters. You've got a lever on the back here. You can set them for a low drag, where the fish can run with it, or you can set them for a higher drag, where you bite the fish. You adjust your level of drag for the low drag at the back here, and of course, as normal, you adjust the level of drag for the high drag at the front. I've got this one set a little bit heavier than normal because I have been using it for trolling, in which case I set it there for the trolling, and if I hook up, I flip it over to bite the fish. But I'm thinking about getting another rod with the overhead reel on for this form of trolling, for a snapper and the like. And if I do that, I'll lighten this bait caster drag off and just use this for live baiting and float lining. That is one thing with a conventional reel. Notice how I'm feeding the line with my thumb, making sure that it goes backwards and forwards across the reel. You can get reels with a level wind on them. Personally, I don't like them for anything other than electric reels. Having a level wind on an electric reel is a good idea, but when cranking the handle, I just as soon guide the line on by myself. You can see in this clip how I work the thumb on my left hand to guide the line across the reel so that it winds on evenly. You don't have any lumps in the reel. It's not hard to do. I used to do it all the time with the Albie reel. You have to guide the line on with that as well. So it's no extra effort to use the overhead as opposed to the Albie. I think most in my generation grew up using Albie reels. This is a shot of high-speed trolling. I find that the overhead reel is the very best for high-speed trolling. It's got more drag. You have control of the drag setting. So I can set the drag to just let the line out a little bit as I get up to speed and then go and adjust it so just stop the line from going out at that speed. That gives the fish a chance to hit it without putting too much strain on the line to break it, and then you can increase the drag to wind it in. Of course, with all my reels, I set the drag before I go out on a set of scales. I've shown you how to do that. And I make sure I don't break the line by over-tightening the drag, because in the past, with inexperience, I have done that. And I can tell you from my experience, you're totally gutted when you lose a big fish by over-tightening your drag, because you know it's all your fault.
The line's peeling more slowly. I'll just let it all go through that green section for another 10 metres, and then I'll tighten the drag a little bit so it doesn't go any further. There we go, that's it. Tighten that up. Now that's a Mad Max lure out there, and I'm trolling it at 14 knots at the moment. It's supposed to be good for up to 20 knots, but around 15 is okay, I think, for high speed trolling.
I have used ordinary spinning reels for trolling. That's what I've been using for trolling for snapper up until just recently. But I've got an overhead reel on my snapper trolling rod now, and I'm going to get another rod and set it up the same with an overhead reel for snapper trolling. I feel that's going to work a lot better for what I'm doing. While for general fishing, I will use any rod and reel combo. I don't think it makes that much difference. There are certain things where it definitely does pay to have the right rod and reel combo for the job. And just to recap on some of the features of the different reels, a spinning reel is easy to use. They're easy to learn, they're great for beginners, the casting is easy, you basically just can't go wrong with it. You can use spinning reels for pretty much any fishing technique. It works better for some than others. As I say, I'm not real keen on them for trolling, but they do work in certain circumstances. They're great for bait fishing, lure fishing, jigging, all those other styles. Most spinning reels offer a decent amount of drag. As a general rule, you can get a cheaper spinning reel than an overhead reel. When you get into the high-end spinning reels, yes, they're very expensive, but you can go and buy some real cheap ones, whereas you can't go and buy a really cheap overhead reel as a rule. Some of the cons for a spinning reel are that I find they're more prone to line tangling, particularly if you're using a mono line, which takes a bit of a set to it, comes off the reel in coils. Spinning reels aren't real good for that. They also create line twist as they're winding the line in, which doesn't happen on an overhead reel. Of the reels I've taken apart, I generally find that the spinning reels are more complicated internally, mechanically that is, so I guess that makes them more prone to wear and tear. I've had more spinning reels than I have had overhead reels, but I've also had more spinning reels that I've retired through wear and tear and general gear failure internally. I haven't had any overhead reels retired for that reason. Now, overhead reels are generally credited with a very smooth action, which I can attest to, and an increased casting distance over a spinning reel, which I can't attest to because I'm not real good at casting them. However, people that can do very well with them. I can, however, attest that they are ideal for bottom fishing and trolling, which are the roles that I prefer to use them for. They're also good for float lining, although when I do float line with one, I keep it in my hand so I can put my thumb on the reel if a fish starts to run off with it, and then engage the drag to fight it. But the free spool action of them when you're float lining is just perfect. But you can't put them in the rod holder and leave it if you're doing that. Overhead reels generally have a more powerful drag system, which means you can put a heavier line on it and actually get use of that line by setting the drag appropriately. And as I've already mentioned, the clicker on the overhead reel gives you an audible warning when a fish strikes if you're trolling, or even if you've got the rod sitting in the rod holder and you're bottom bashing, you can go and attend to another rod and you'll hear when a fish takes the bait. There's a bit more of a learning curve in using an overhead reel. Really, guiding the line on, I don't count that as a learning curve. That is so easy, you can do it blindfolded. However, learning to cast with it is quite a learning curve. I bought my father a baitcaster reel many years ago, and he never got real good at it. I've had a few goes with it, probably 24 casts all up, and while I can cast it, I certainly can't do anything like the real professionals you see on YouTube. They do it brilliantly. However, it's something to aspire to, and if you're into casting and you want to spend the time learning it, then a baitcaster reel is ideal for that. The biggest downside for the overhead reels for me is their cost. They are expensive. You want a good overhead reel, you're going to pay for it, which is why most of my reels are spinning reels. I've only got overhead reels where I really believe that they are essential for the job that I want to do, and most of them have come in more recent years. You know, after the kids have left home and you've got a little bit more income that you can spend on luxury items. So that's just a broad outline of the various features and drawbacks of the options of an overhead reel or a spinning reel. What it really boils down to is what you're doing with the reel, and even more importantly, which reel you feel more comfortable with. Because when you get right down to it, if you're not comfortable with the reel, you're going to find catching fish a real challenge. And that's really all I've got time to say about these two reel choices in this video. I've covered all the essential items. For a lot of fishing I prefer the overhead reel. Pretty much all my fishing I don't cast at all. The only time I cast these days is if there's a school of fish busting up on the surface, like spotted mackerel or tuna. Then I'll grab my spinning reel. I've got one set up with a little slug on it I keep on the boat all the time, and I want a long distance cast out of that. If I could cast an overhead reel, I'd probably use that. But as I've said, the reel you want is the one you're most comfortable using for the job at hand. And it doesn't matter what sort of reel it is, if you're comfortable using it, that's the one you're going to catch the fish with. So I'll leave you with that thought. Until next time, good fishing.